Welcome to the Vocal Lab podcast with your hosts Shelby Rollins and Jason Catrone, bringing you the best from the music industry. Get ready for first-class conversations packed with exclusive techniques and transformative insights, all designed to help you reach your top note. Welcome to today's episode, Shelby.
Jason.
Great to see ya.
Good to see you.
Always. How are we?
Tired, man.
I'm a little tired today too, and then my voice is like it feels crunchy. For all those singers out there listening, they know what we're talking about when we say crunchy.
Opportunity. I feel the same way, actually. My voice feels tired. And it's like the opportunity to go and record something sultry.
Yes.
Like this. Do you remember from our childhood, not international, I don't know, she might have been internationally known on the radio, Delilah?
Oh, Delilah, yeah.
Delilah.
She's still out there.
Yeah.
She's got like 20...
I used to think she was only in my hometown.
I did too. Isn't that funny? But
I could call Sunny 98.5 and ask Delilah to play my favorite song.
But she had like this most soothing voice.
She sure did.
She does. She still does. I don't know. We're talking like she's passed.
I know.
She still does.
Let's have Delilah on the show.
I would love to. You know, I know her publicist. Both her publicists.
Of course you do.
I've actually
It's time for the bit that Carlos told us
actually-
to introduce into the show.
What? I've actually met Delilah.
The craziest thing happened last night. Or what was it? You'll never believe. That's here we go. Perfect segue. You're gonna die.
You're gonna die.
Tell us.
Yeah.
How do you what
Well,
tell us.
Two of my publicist friends, one being, see this crunchy's gonna come through right there. You hear that? Gosh.
Two of his publicist friends. One being
a guy named Ben Laro, has Pure Publicity. Really good friend. He worked with Delilah. That was. Did you hear that? Yeah. He worked with Delilah. That's hard to say. For several years, and when he was working with her, this is when I lived in Nashville, first round. She did some big event downtown at an art gallery, and
she MC it. I wanted her to read audiobooks to me.
It was like a fundraiser. I forget what it was for, but yeah, she was there, so I met her, got my photo with her, the whole thing. It was really cool.
What does she look like? I have this mental image.
What do you think she looks like?
Like silky, long, dark hair and like olive skin. I don't know.
You're close. You're close. She has blonde hair.
How is that close?
Well, just the like long flowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can wrap my mind around blonde Delilah. Does she wear red lipstick? I kind of want her to.
I think she probably does.
Because, I always think of her playing the song Lady in Red on her show. Mm-hmm. And I loved her introductions to songs. They were so indulgent and like extra. And I loved it.
Well, she still does it. You can
so
still
dramatic.
take it in at night.
Is she still on the radio?
Yeah, of course.
I don't listen to the radio.
She actually has the biggest, one of the biggest
Spotify.
syndicated radio shows in the world.
Well, now I'm going to go listen to it. And after this whole conversation, we're going to now invite Delilah onto the show.
Yeah, there's something soothing about her voice.
Super soothing.
I think my other friend Aaron Chrysler, who also is a publicist, I think he does still work with her. But yeah, she lives on an island in outside of Seattle. She's got like 28 kids.
I'm sorry?
No, she's got like 20-something kids.
You're lying.
No.
Delilah did not have that many babies.
No, she's adopted.
She's adopted that many babies.
Yeah. She's got a huge... And she records her radio show from her home. Like, she's very, very much a family woman. And
I have got to meet this lady.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated.
She's been more, I think in the latter part of her career, she's been more open to telling her story and doing interviews herself and things like that, where, forever she was just working. And
she also used to give love advice on the air. People would call and be like, I don't know what to do about my boyfriend, and she'd just tell them what to do. She was like Dr. Phil on the radio.
Yes, she was. But
Delilah,
her voice was so
listening?
soothing. Wow, we've gone on this tangent.
We didn't
Delilah.
mean to talk about Delilah, but here we are.
Not at all. Why did we start talking about it?
Because our voices are tired.
Oh, our voices are tired.
But, that actually is sort of a segue into what we are going to talk about today. So maybe it all comes together in the end. Which is vocal health and some of the recent vocal injuries in superstardom land of singers.
Yeah.
Like who are we just talking about? Who just recently announced they're retiring from an epic career.
Yeah, Steven Tyler.
It's wild.
Aerosmith.
You were the one who broke the news to me.
Yeah.
I did not know until you told me.
Yeah.
And,
Newsflash. No,
and
yeah.
how fascinating is it that he's actually never gotten to this point prior. Based on the way he uses his voice, I'm astounded he made it this far.
And
but
what
it
do you
is
mean
still
by the
really
way he
sad.
uses his voice?
Well, he's so aggressive, Like
such an aggressive
he's
singer.
a screamer. And I'm a fan of Aerosmith. One of my favorite Aerosmith songs of all time is "Hole in My Soul." Do you remember that one? There's a hole in my soul. It's been killing me forever. There's a place where the garden never grows. It's a good song. Go listen to it. Anyway.
I don't think I know that
It's
one.
like a lesser known hit. It's probably one he usually plays in shows. I've never seen Aerosmith live, but it was big enough for people to know it, but it was not a single.
I've never seen him live
Amazing
either.
song.
I had a friend in high school, funny side story. Friend in high school who was obsessed with Aerosmith. Had seen him hundreds of times, right?
Oh,
he was one of those people, like, they knew him because he would always be up front and close. And he wasn't weird. He's a cool dude. He was normal. Like, but his dad started taking him as a kid, and they just went to all these shows, and he would travel over and see him.
That's cool.
One time, I think the story was, like, he threw his hat on stage, and Steven Tyler put it on, threw it back, and there was a little piece of his hair in it, and so my friend
He could grow another Steven.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he had like a thread of his hair, and so he had like all this, like, you know, merch and stuff too.
Oh my gosh.
But the funny part is this. Found out in college one day, because he went to college. I started at school in Kentucky, right? Transylvania. He went to UK. And I was over there. I think he had just moved in. I don't know. They had these big towers they lived in. And he was roommates with my really close friend, and for the first year. And he comes into the room one day. It's this little box of a room, and I forget how he said it, but he used a number reference, and we're like, what? He had made a personal mission to act out every song in a sexual encounter with someone, and he had just had sex in the elevator.
Oh my gosh.
What song is that? That's on the tongue.
Is that is it called Sex in the Elevator? I don't know.
Loving in the elevator.
Oh, right.
True story.
That story is going to get us a little E, I think, today. Oh my gosh.
You need an E every once in a while.
How scandalous and extra. Good grief.
Yeah.
You got stories for literally everything we could ever talk about. You truly do. But back to Steven Tyler's voice.
Thought of that.
So he screams.
Yes.
And he screams in a mix, but it's also abusive. It's what I would call an abusive mix. Pretty much always.
I've never thought of that.
Which I think
that way.
I mean, you know, it's like I just want to like talk about vocal technique for a second, but half our audience may not have any idea what I'm talking about, but that's okay. If you're singing in a mix, you're blending the foundation of your speaking voice, your chest voice with your head voice as well, which is how all of the greatest, you know, power singers are successfully singing in the stratosphere notes as they're singing in a mix. They are not shouting from chest voice. That's basically impossible. However, mix is not a get out of jail free card, silver bullet to everything is now fine. It's not even an on off switch of doing anything incorrectly. You know, like singing in your mix helps it, but there's also other work that has to be done to disengage too much strain and tension. So you could be doing it partially correct, right? But there's still some refining that needs to be done. And I deal with this a lot with artists that I'm working with. They come in and they have a measure of good technique and mixed voice, but it's not clean enough or it's not free enough to get them to where they need to be for stamina purposes. But because there is a measure of mix in Steven Tyler's technique, he's been able to get away with it. Plus, some people are built different. I couldn't do that. My voice is a little too precious and dainty to be able to do what he did and not be already like toast at my age. And it's like Rod Stewart. Yeah. Also like chords of steel.
Yeah.
But most of us need to assume that we are not the exception like they are. They just have tough as nails kind of vocal anatomy. Most of us are not that way. But he still is a human being susceptible to vocal injury. Of course, the injury itself was something I'd never heard of. He had vocal damage to his cords, but he had a, what did you say it was called?
Laryngeal
fracture.
Yeah,
I mean,
a laryngeal fracture.
Like that's, oh my.
Yeah, and so I wasn't overly familiar with that either.
Yeah.
I thought he had maybe some surgery, or I think he has had multiple surgeries in the past, right? Just from the aggressiveness of singing.
Which I'm not surprised.
Yeah, he, from what I've read before too, had a trusted team of laryngologists in New York City that he's always been in relationship with, which is smart and wise, and at some point probably had to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw a doctor on this show that I was watching, basically saying, because there was still some undisclosed information to exactly what was happening. But this doctor was saying that a fracture like that typically happens from blunt force to the cords, most often from like a sports injury, or someone punches you in the neck, or a car accident, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And the voice basically never fully recovers from the trauma.
I actually worked with a guy who, he didn't describe it as a laryngeal fracture, but definitely MTD, which is muscle tension dysphonia, and some major issues that happened when he was a baseball player, and almost like professional. Like I don't think this was in college. I think he played in the minor leagues. I'm trying to remember, but he also sang and loved singing and was a really good singer. Even though he was pursuing baseball, he got hit with a fastball in the neck.
Ooh.
And couldn't speak for months.
Yes.
And then years down the road, he was like, I kind of want to sing again. And that was when I started working with him. But I was just like shuddering and cringing at the thought of something like that happening.
No,
Nobody wants to
same.
get hit with a 90-mile-an-hour baseball,
No,
but
same.
to the throat, hard pass.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, look at that. I made a sports joke on accident.
You did.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's what this doctor was saying. Is like, it's really uncommon that it just happens to a singer, and so
traumatizing.
His thought on it was that, I forget this doctor's name. He's not a laryngologist, but his thought on it was that just the years and years of Tyler's aggressiveness of singing led to, trauma over time that was just got to the point where it was not repairable.
And it could have been, it was just that compound effect of aggression trauma, that then there was maybe a smaller incident potentially that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back, that for most people wouldn't have caused that, but if it were him already kind of in that vulnerable place, maybe just tipped him over the edge. Like maybe there was a smaller blunt force trauma, got knocked a little bit around, but it wasn't as aggressive as it might have taken. Who knows? But the fact that he could sing, I mean, Steven Tyler's like pushing 70?
I think he's probably over 70.
I'd like to know. Carlos.
Yeah. Do we have
our resident producer here on set. I'm curious, but that's got to be close to where he is. So he's had a crazy long career, but he was
76.
still 76. That's older than my dad.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
He said trombones. Bump.
Oh, yeah. In the big parade.
Wow, we got jokes today coming from
I know.
every corner.
We were all tired, and now we're comedians.
Look at us.
Anyway.
I mean, that's crazy.
That
76.
is crazy. So people are, sad that he's, oh my gosh, how tragic he's retiring. He's 76.
Yeah.
The man was still singing and touring Aerosmith shows.
I know, it's crazy.
That's not like
It's not normal.
Kumbaya.
That's
like
not normal.
High energy.
Literally not
Good
normal.
night. No.
You know who else did that
Still
late
really
into his
hard
career?
to probably process as a musician, professionally still singing at that age. I feel for him emotionally because I know that's
Of course.
very, very sad.
The statement that the band released was really sincere and touching.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're all really saddened by this, and so rightly so. But it is crazy that he's that age doing what he does. Same other side of the coin was someone like Pavarotti, who was still doing what he did, changed a little bit, but he was still belting out notes
Crazy.
late into his career.
Yeah.
Up until his death, really.
Probably.
Which was not expected. And same thing, but there you have a very
Yeah.
trained, highly technical, skilled singer.
Right.
But again, taking care of his instrument for so long, still able to do what he did.
Yeah.
Another superhuman vocalist, though.
Yeah.
That's not normal either, you know? And so, you know, and then you go to like my favorite, Tony Bennett, you know, and him doing his last concert at 95.
Golly.
Still sounding amazing. But again,
That's so
very
crazy.
different, you know, but he was still hitting some A's and
Yeah.
B flats.
I mean, you look at, this is just in the music space, but Betty White, she was still acting up until she was basically 100. You
Died
know?
right before.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so
like,
crazy.
Was it like a month before her birthday? She died.
It was so sad. She was going to be 100. And they would book this whole, like...
There was a massive, like, televised production
They were
thing
going to
doing,
be
right?
in theaters. Her 100th birthday on TV and in theaters. I was so ready. Here's a fun fact.
So sad.
Fun fact. My birthday is sandwiched between Betty White's and
Dolly Parton?
Dolly Parton's.
Well, what do you
I
mean
call us
sandwich
the
between?
trifecta of talent. Me, Betty, and Dolly.
Those are like, you're just, that is funny. Those are like your, I don't know, like you want to be best friends with Betty and Dolly.
Gosh, and Dolly.
No. What are their birthdays?
Mine's the...
In January?
Yeah. Betty's was the 17th, mine's the 18th, and Dolly's is the 19th. I think, or they're flipped. I think Dolly's the 19th.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just, you know, we were always celebrating birthdays.
I share a birthday with
calling
Bob.
each other on the phone, being like, "Happy birthday, Betty." Hey,
that would have
Jason."
been so precious.
Can you imagine if that could have happened?
That wouldn't have actually surprised me all that much, to be honest. But I share a birthday with Bob Dole. Look at that.
Half our audience probably don't know who that is.
Probably not. Wait, has he died? Has
Wait,
Bob
really?
Dole died?
Bob Dole died.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He ran for president.
he did a million years ago. So, okay.
He had a war injury and
Facts.
held a pin in his... Talking of injuries, he held a pin in his hand always because he couldn't use one of his hands.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You'd,
He's like, "I'm Bob Dole."
if there were a Jeopardy of random pop culture knowledge, you would be the reigning champion.
Mm-hmm.
You really would. You know more random things.
Very random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, back to Steven Tyler. The takeaway for me in this...
I sang at another fact. I sang at a fundraiser for Bob Dole with
Yeah.
Bob and what was his wife's name?
Yeah, I don't know.
She was head of the American Red Cross.
Okay.
Because my great aunt Edna and Uncle Bob were
You're trying to like
huge-
one up me. I'm
huge
like, I
in-
share a birthday with Bob Dole. You're like,
huge.
I sang for Bob Dole.
They were huge in the Republican Party in Kentucky, and you know my dad was in politics, so I was always singing at these
Oh my
political
gosh.
events. God bless the USA. I sang it right there in Louisville, Kentucky.
Look at that.
Lincoln Day dinner. Back to injuries.
Back to injuries. Maybe. We'll see. It might trigger another memory for Jason. So, Steven Tyler, a laryngeal fracture, damaged vocal cords, and basically, the fracture was a year ago. This was not actually just recent. It's just recently that they have announced, I can't go on. So, something has transpired between, because he's actually performed since that fracture happened.
Yeah,
I read he had performed back in May. It was like a comeback performance that apparently went over decently well, and that was just a few months ago. So something's happened between then and now that is made singing basically now impossible for him, which it's heartbreaking for that to happen to any singer at any age, truly at any age.
Well, I think to that point too, it's like, I think this is hard for so many people because we're now, I think you would agree with this, arguably one of the last great decades of music was the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Really the 90s into early 2000s. I'm not saying there's not great music today, but that's when there was the major shift before social media, before the
Like the rise of EDM
the
tracks.
rise of EDM, all that,
Yeah.
more into production. Also, what seems to be, even though it's not fully true, a diminishing role of the labels having
Sure.
all the power, even though they still do have that. But it just functions so differently now, right?
Yeah.
And
Where's
so,
rock music these days?
well, totally. There's not only that, but these were the people that labels, for whatever reason, handpicked and groomed and made the superstars they are.
Yeah.
Partly. I mean, they're superstars because they're great. Aerosmith's great, right? But we're in this time frame now where all these great legends are getting older and they're going to retire, they're going to pass on, and that's going to be a lot of sad memories for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. That's like on the edge of that Gen Z and slash millennial generation for sure, because we're like, oh my gosh, I grew up listening to Aerosmith, and I for sure did. I have vivid memories of listening to Aerosmith even as early as elementary school.
And it was
truly,
and because of that, we were in that time frame where all of these great singers and music became attached to movies, which was also a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
That's not a thing really anymore.
No, not really. You see it a little bit in like kids movies, like cartoons and stuff. Trolls.
Sure.
You know, Justin Timberlake's role in Trolls. So you're seeing
and
that.
Disney still has its thing out there, but it's not like who goes to the movies anymore? People go, but not recently, really.
But I probably haven't been in a year.
Was it packed?
It was. I mean, no, there were some open seats, but I saw my daughter and I went and saw Inside Out 2.
Oh yeah, that's supposed to be really good.
I cried like a little baby. I cried and cried and cried. It was incredible.
I need to see it.
It was so good.
I've heard it's really good.
Could not recommend it more for parents and kids, especially if you have a daughter around the age of middle school, like hovering around that age. Oh my word. But this is a digression, so I'm going to circle back.
Yeah, I'm not saying people don't go to movies, because they do. But
2 thoughts on my takeaway of Steven Tyler before we move on to the next person we're going to talk about. But Steven Tyler for me is it's like a bit of an object lesson and a bit of an inspirational challenge. The object lesson is take care of your voice and don't assume that you are Steven Tyler or any other Greek god who can do whatever the heck that they want to and not suffer any consequences. Because the fact, again, that it took Steven Tyler that long is wild to have any kind of a point of no return. So he pushed the envelope and the boundary more than I would have ever expected somebody could. But at the same time, you can't approach it thinking, and I'm not even saying he had no technique. I'm saying he did. It just was abusive enough to where it followed the law of diminishing returns, right? It's going to eventually get to that point. So taking care of your voice, making sure that all that is dialed in so that you don't end up, because the reality is most of us, if we were doing that, would be crapped out in our 30s, not our 70s, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then your career is done, and we're in here for the long game. My second takeaway is the inspirational side of, hot damn, he was singing like that until he was 76. That's inspirational to me, that somebody could still have a career that is that long-standing and keep playing and selling out arenas. Yeah. Like arenas.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. That's wild. And that's really any artist's probably biggest dream, is to be able to do it their whole lives. But very, very few do, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But it's possible. It's possible to still be doing what you want to do into your latter retirement years. Yep. And I'm inspired by that. And you know who else inspires the heck out of me? Celine Dion.
Absolutely. Both of us.
I mean, good grief. She's better. I saw her, I don't remember if I've told this story on the podcast. I saw her in Vegas in like last month of her residency back in 2019 at Caesar's Palace. And it was a bucket list show for me. I had my whole life basically wanted, because I mean, she was doing that residency for decades or something crazy, like a really long time.
I think she did it for like 10 years.
And it had been on my list to see that show.
Had you seen her live before?
Never. I've never seen her live before. And so my husband took me for our 10-year anniversary on a surprise trip, and we went to Vegas. Amazing. And I was also 6 months pregnant with our youngest child. And so the amount of looks that I got walking up and down the Vegas Strip for several days were real enjoyable. Basically,
because you were pregnant?
What in the world is a pregnant woman doing in Vegas? Because it's just debauchery city. It's like people just people are wildly drunk and actively drinking and smoking all sorts of things just right there in broad daylight in the middle of the day on the street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a special, special place in not my favorite way. But, and I remember thinking, the only reason I am here is for Celine Dion. This is the only reason I'm in this town. I don't love Vegas. I'm not a fan. And after we went and saw her, I was like, cool, I'm good to never come back here again. I'd be fine. Unless Celine returned, which... She is.
Yeah.
Which, crazy. So let's talk about Celine Dion. That show, by the way, I cried and cried and cried. I knew every word to every song. I had amazing seats, and I just sat there with my big pregnant belly like...
I cried too.
She was unbelievable. But I remember thinking, you are better in your 50s than you were in your 20s. And I am here to witness the greatness.
Yeah.
And you have left every other singer on this planet without excuse.
Yeah, no, for sure. But she's one who we know from so many stories, meticulous with her voice.
So hardcore.
Taking care of it.
Yeah.
Right? The biggest story is like she would constantly when she was on tour in her heyday, she and her husband, Renee, was his name Renee?
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a sign language that they would communicate with.
It's amazing.
She wouldn't talk.
Yeah, on show days. I knew she didn't speak.
She wouldn't talk show days,
all.
and she wouldn't talk after a show, especially if she had like multiple days in a row. She really would sing and no talk. So she and Renee and her assistant, her PA, they had this secret language they could sign with, or she would write down on paper.
I wonder why didn't she just learn sign language?
Maybe she did at some level. I don't know.
It's like a secret. It's like a Vulcan language. You know, it's like
I
only
say it's
special.
secret.
It's a created language.
Maybe they did learn sign language just straight out. I don't know.
Somebody should
But
tell us.
she was meticulous with taking care of her voice and training it, treating it like it needed to be. The prized
Super precious
instrument.
with it.
It would be like, Yo-Yo Ma flies with his cello. It gets a seat.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because that's his.
That thing's big.
It's not
It
only
probably
big,
needs a whole row.
but it's like it's his cello. He's got to like protect this
No,
thing.
you can't check the cello and put it under the plane.
No.
No.
And so that's how singers need to treat their voices. I'm guilty not always treating it the best. I'm sure you are as well.
Yes.
Because it's one of those things like
I'm
air.
guilty.
It's one of those things like air we do take for granted. Like it's always here. We're using it right now.
Yeah.
My voice is here. It's kind of like, the day that you're like, oh, you're feeling great. And then one day you just wake up feeling horrible and you're in bed for a week. And you're like, I hope this doesn't continue because I need to get back to normal life. So we take health and wellness for granted.
Right.
We take this voice for granted a lot. She's someone who didn't. And so I think it's, for me personally, been really sad and tragic to see her illness.
Yeah. Because it wasn't
Is it really an illness? I guess you could say
it's a disease, right?
a debilitating disease.
Yeah.
And stories have come out just recently, too, that I guess in the latter part of her stint in Vegas, as she was having signs and symptoms of this, she would leave stage often. And there were times they would even help her on and off a stage. She would work in some costume changes.
Oh, she had a lot of costume changes.
Yeah, but
actually, that makes me wonder if any of that was going on the night I saw her.
Possibly.
She was so good, though.
So her return has been extra special for millions of people around the world, us included.
And what was also different, to your point, is that this disease was not a result of her doing something wrong.
Right.
It was this freak thing that I guess nobody really knows how it happened or where it came from. And maybe it's just a
really
latent
rare,
genetic thing that pops up at some point. Yeah, stiff man syndrome, I think is what it's called. But I mean, the way it made her voice spasm and like prevent her from actually even speaking it really is tragic. And just her own heartbreak over the inability to use her own voice, because she speaks about it being like the center of her being and like how she experiences joy in the world. And is there some maybe codependence there? Probably, but I'm not about casting judgment on it. I'm more just saying like it was so valuable and important to her that she did take such extreme measures to take care of her voice, and yet still, she has had to deal with this. It's been her cross to bear. It's very sad.
Fully, and through that whole time too, she lost her husband.
Right.
For me, it's been really touching and again, I'll use the word sad, to see someone I looked up to so much vocally and admired all her work and her art, who gave everything of her life in her youth,
Yeah.
right, and in her middle age, to have her last half of her life that she's now entering into be faced with a lot of pain and trauma and tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
None of us are immune to it.
None of us are immune to it, right? Even Celine. And so
yeah.
it is one of the great comeback stories. It will forever be.
I know.
That she's back. Whatever we have of her,
yes,
it's going to be different now.
But I'm grateful.
But we're all grateful, and it's really, really amazing to see. And I'm going to go see her in Vegas. We talked about this.
Yeah.
We're going to go. We're going to make this happen.
Again.
We got to figure out a way to meet her. I just want to meet Celine. Want to meet Celine so bad. It needs to happen.
I would die.
Yeah.
I'm super invested, I think, in her story in this. And also to the point of the way she took care of her voice before this disease wrecked her, she has then doubled down to get back to where she can be back on stage and perform again. And the PT that she went through, all of the stuff that she has gone through to get back to it is also incredibly inspirational, because how many people would have just quit and been like, too hard, I can't do it.
And I think that's maybe
that can't word's just not in her vocabulary.
I think maybe that's the crux of all of this. It's not, it is health and wellness and vocal health, what we're really getting at today. But I think the shining bright light of all this conversation is don't give up.
Don't give up.
And also do it with grace.
Yeah.
Right? Even both these stories, legendary artists that everyone looks up to and admires for the art they've given the world. And through very different scenarios of pain and struggle and trauma, they both are gracefully walking with us through that.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Not every person can do that and does that.
It takes such vulnerability.
It takes that. It takes strength. It takes
very bold
honesty,
and brave.
All of that. It's just, that's what I think is really special about it. I mean, you know what?
Seeing her sing on the Eiffel Tower in French too, because she's French Canadian. And her first record she ever put out was almost all in French. There might have been one or two songs in English. I like cried thinking about not just how beautiful it all was, and it's the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, which I love the Olympics, but it was also just everything that I know leading up to that point and how important I knew that had to have been to her. We were talking about whether or not we thought it was officially live and or auto-tuned. And I believe it was live. I do also believe it was probably auto-tuned, but definitely auto-tuned. But not to the degree of, you don't put lipstick on a pig. Okay? She was already real good. They needed to probably refine that, and really make it as epic as possible. But
it's going around the world.
It's going around the world.
To billions of people. And forever there. And forever her comeback. So they needed all the bells, whistles, and tricks to make sure that was the best it could be. And that is 100% okay.
Yes.
You'll
and
always have haters
who'll
talk
still
about that.
Her singing
it's totally
it. You can't auto-tune everything. Have you ever heard these YouTube gaffes, these, blooper reels basically of auto-tune gone wrong, where someone's note was so off that even auto-tune was like, I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
We should do a reaction to some of those sometime.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't thought about that.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, no, anyway. That comeback was great.
She was amazing.
It was. You know what the stiff man syndrome makes me think of?
What?
Have you ever seen fainting goats?
Yes.
They're so funny. My mom's friend growing up.
Those are funny.
When
YouTube
I was
videos.
growing up, she had all these animals. She had a zoo. Like the school kids would come see it. So she had monkeys and a couple elephants and she had she had crazy animals. No, she had crazy animals.
I didn't know that was legal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, somehow she got this. I guess it's not really legal, but somehow she had it all.
Okay.
Maybe they changed the law after that. She doesn't have it anymore.
Interesting.
But one day the monkey attacked a school kid. My friend Jeremy's mom was a school teacher. She had this little girl that was a little bit of a problem, not from a good family. And one day she came to school with a picture of her dad naked on the couch. She just had it in her little purse.
Interesting.
Yeah. She one day these are funny stories. One day Miss Connor was her name. She had all this little kids, kindergarten, paint pictures. And this little girl, not paint, there was she's like, okay, let's draw draw your mom, draw your dad, And so they're drawing them out, and this little girl raises her hand. She's like, Miss Donna, yes. It's like, where do I put the vagina? This girl was a hot mess.
Where do I put it?
But so
gosh.
You would go to this little petting zoo where they had the fainting goats, and the way it would happen is she'd put the monkey, one of the monkeys, in a little dress and walk it out. Was on a little leash and would hold the hand to greet the school kids.
Sad and
but
weird.
all the kids had to like line up, just to be orderly. Well, this little trouble girl decides to step out and get closer to the monkey when she comes out with it, and the monkey jumps on top of the little girl and just starts going.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that ended school trips for the petting zoo. Eventually, the petting zoo went away.
Maybe she got sued, and
Yeah.
that's why the petting zoo went away.
She may have, but probably not.
I
don't know, but the
That'd be a
fainting
good
goats were
YouTube
so
video, like a cute little girl going to pet a monkey wearing a dress.
And
That
then
then the
just
monkey attacks her in a dress, no less.
She just got scratched up. It scared her, of course. She's probably still terrified of monkeys.
Probably. With good reason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, just a random funny side
On that
story.
note,
We should wrap this thing.
we should. Oh gosh,
Oh,
don't
yeah.
quit though. Don't give up. And if you were attacked by a monkey, go back and get back on that horse again and pet a monkey. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
But not in all seriousness. It when you see what some people have overcome and how massive some obstacles have been that people have overcome, it can really give perspective to the challenge that you might be facing now.
Absolutely.
And not to shame yourself and be like, I'm pitiful, but more to inspire you that, no, I can do this. When you've been maybe down, feeling sorry for yourself, considering quitting, considering giving up, or getting too like meta or existential, which is probably my ditch that I can fall into, is I get too existential about stuff when I'm like right here in it,
Sure.
It's too close. To look at that and be like, I can put on my big girl panties and I can handle it, and I can do this, and I can rest, I can do this gracefully, but I can do this.
Yeah.
So thank you, Stephen and
good.
Celine,
Yeah. Thank you for everything.
for epic
That you've
careers
given us.
and the gifts of
And
your
songs
art.
that go on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, until next time, we should go watch some fainting goats on YouTube.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, let's go watch Steven Tyler and Celine Dion and get inspired. Or that.
Yeah.
Got to keep the brevity,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vocal Lab podcast. Ready to join the top ranks of the music industry? Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more first-class conversations that make the extraordinary your new ordinary. Until next time, keep striving for your top note.